Ulang dari slide paling depan. Okay, today we will present about our research with title Too Wet or Too Dry, Assessing the Impact of Floods and Drought on the Rice Production in Indonesia. Let's meet the team. There is Waluyo from Siliwangi University. I am Putri Anjari Widiasanti from Gajah Mada University and Mela Junita from Surabaya University. Let's take a look to the agricultural sector in Indonesia. The agricultural sector is one of the key pillars of the Indonesian economy. The agricultural sector has contributed an average of 13% to Indonesia's gross domestic product in the last decade. In the first quarter of 2025, the agricultural sector experienced the highest GDP growth, reaching 10.52%. The food crop subsector experienced the highest GDP growth at 42.46%. The first picture is the average annual rice production by province in Indonesia from 2018 to 2023. Rice production positively affects food security in Indonesia. And the second picture is average annual rice harvest area by province in Indonesia on the same period. One factor that affects rice production is the size of the harvested area. A study conducted by Santoso in 2015 shows that the size of rice field affects rice production in Indonesia. These findings are in line with the result of studies in the various regions in Indonesia, which show that land area has a significant positive impact on rice production. So by converting or damaging agricultural land will significantly impact rice production and certainly disrupt national food security. On the other hand, rice production is greatly influenced by climatic conditions. A number of studies explain that the increase in the temperature and rainfall due to climate change has an impact in the decline of the rice production. Another tangible impact of climate change is the increases in the frequency and intensity of climate-related natural disasters such as flood and drought. The agricultural sector is highly vulnerable to flood and drought. Flood and drought are also on the rise in Indonesia. Between 2014 and 2024, there have been more than 12,000 floods and more than 500 droughts. Disruption to domestic rice production can undermine food security stability. Therefore, it is important to conduct further studies on the impact of floods and drought on rice production in Indonesia. By understanding the impact of floods and drought on rice production in Indonesia, appropriate mitigation measure can be determined to minimize the existing impact in an effort to maintain national food security stability.
This study used panel data from 34 provinces in Indonesia from the period 2018 to 2023. The data used is secondary data collected from the Central Statistics Agency, the Agriculture Statistic Database website of the Ministry of Agriculture, and the Agriculture Data and Information System Center of the Secretariat General of the Ministry of Agriculture. The model in this study will use a modified by Cobb-Douglas production function approach by adding flood and drought parameter to the model to determine the effect of flood and drought on rice production. Describe the statistic table of the result is show that, and then in the model selection test, in the test show, we have a fixed effect model more appropriate than common effect model, and then Hausman test describe a fixed effect model more appropriate than random effect model. Based on the result of estimate using a fixed effect model, it is known that the variables that are highly significant to rice production in Indonesia are the harvest area variable at a significance level of 1%, the flood rice field area variable has a significant negative relationship to the rice production in Indonesia at a significance level of 5%. When the drought effect rice field area variable has a negative but insignificant relation to rice production in Indonesia. For every 1,000 hectares of the rice field affected by flooding, Rice production is estimated to decrease by around 0.4141% ceteris paribus. Based on the result of the model robust test, it can be seen that the FL variable, or the area of rice field affected by flooding, consistently has a negative and significant effect on rice production in Indonesia in our test model. Meanwhile, the DF variable, or the area of rice field affected by drought, show the same consistency across our model, namely a negative but insignificant effect on rice production in Indonesia.
Okay, well, next we will discuss about the impact of flood on rice production. Sudden or seasonal flooding can cause serious damage to rice crop and significantly reduce yield. The impact of flooding on rice productivity also depends heavily on the severity of the flooding. The stage of rice growth when flooding occurs also affect rice production. These findings are supported by the result of other studies showing that flooding during the early flowering stage of rice causes a significant decrease in the number of grains per panicle and the fertilization rate, which ultimately result in a considerable reduction in rice yield. In case of stagnant flooding or partial submersion of vegetative parts during the reproductive phase, severe damage to rice plant occurs, resulting in reduced yield, higher susceptibility to pests and diseases, lodging of rice plant, and lower grain quality. The finding in the study can be used as an important consideration for implementing a number of flood disaster mitigation and adaptation measures in the rice farming sectors to minimize the decline in rice production due to flooding. And that next is the, please back to the previous slide. Okay, the impact of drought on rice production. Although the result of the study indicate that there is insufficient evidence to conclude that drought have had statistically consistent effect on rice production in Indonesia during the same period, the negative correlation between the two warrant further research. Drought can reduce rice production through a number of mechanisms. Through stress, reduce plant height, leaf area, root length, shoot length, chlorophyll content, photosynthetic rate, relative water content, water use efficiency, and light interception, and increased membrane damage, leading to a decrease in crop yield. Studies on the relationship between the severity of drought and rice productivity show that severe water shortage halt apical development. Previous finding is also confirmed that water shortage during the vegetative growth phase didn't significantly reduce seed yields, whereas water shortage during the reproductive phase did reduce seed yields. The negative to insignificant relationship between drought and rice production in Indonesia during 2018 and 2023 period could be influenced by several factors, such as the intensity and the frequency of drought in Indonesia, which tend to be lower than floods, making the impact of floods more significant in reducing rice production in Indonesia. Furthermore, the lack of statistical evidence that drought negatively impact rice production could indicate that rice farming in Indonesia has adapted to drought through a number of agricultural technologies, although this doesn't completely eliminate the impact of drought. However, more comprehensive research is needed, considering the severity, the relationship between the timing of the drought and the planting season, the rice varieties planted, and the application of agricultural technology adaptation to obtain a more specific relationship between drought and rice production. As a conclusion, the result of the study using panel data from 34 provinces in Indonesia for the period of 2018 to 2023, estimated using a fixed effect model, indicate a negative relationship between floods and drought on the rice production in Indonesia. Significant relationship only for floods on rice production, where 1,000 hectare increase in land affected by flooding reduced rice production by approximately 0.41%, assuming other factors remain constant. Every 1,000 hectare increase in land affected by drought is estimated to reduce rice production by approximately 0.07, although this relationship is not statistically significant. The finding of the study can be used as a consideration regarding the importance of implementing agricultural mitigation and adaptation strategies to minimize the impact of flood and drought on rice production in Indonesia, as an effort to maintain national food security. These mitigation and adaptation measures are important, considering that future climate projections indicate a potential increase in the frequency, intensity, and severity of flood and drought. Thank you.
Thank you.